Welcome and thank you for tuning into this CAT TV Candidate Forum. My name is Dave LaChance. I'm the news editor of the Bennington Banner. I'll be the moderator. And there are 3 candidates who are running for the Bennington School District Board. 2 of those candidates are with us here today, alphabetically from our left, Jackie Kelly and Jackie Prue. Third candidate, Aaron Sawyer, is also on the ballot. He could not be here with us today, unfortunately. I should explain the ground rules of what we're going to be doing here today. This is not a debate. This is a candidate forum. We're going to be asking each of the candidates the same questions. We're going to give each of them 3 minutes to respond. We're going to alternate between the 2 candidates so that each will have the opportunity to answer a question first and second, and so forth. There will be no opening statements here, but there will be concluding remarks. And with that said, I want to thank candidates for appearing here today and get to our questions. So the first question, we'll start with Jackie Kelly, is to ask, what is it that motivates you to be a school board member?
Well, thanks for that question. It's an interesting question because what motivates anybody to do whatever they do? For me, I happen to really like schools. I spent most of my life in schools. Not only going to schools, but also teaching. And so my motivation is to have schools be the best that they can. Someone asked me recently, well, what was the vision for our schools? And what did we intend to do in the schools? And school improvement is the best thing that anybody could answer that question for. And the other thing is, our students deserve the best that they can get. And the way to really excel in school is to have our best teachers. Our school board does this, and I've been part of this system, and I've been very motivated just by the system and being a part of such a great enterprise and a fellow members of the board.
What motivates me? I believe that every citizen should give back to the community. That's what started me. So I've volunteered on many different things throughout the years, and it just seemed, feasible to volunteer to be a school board member. So I ran and I got elected, and I enjoy children. I believe that it takes a community to educate a student, but I want to make sure that we have the best in place when we give our children the most opportunities that we can afford, so that they can give back when they grow up and become part of our community as adults.
Thank you. Second question, we'll start with Jackie Prue. And that is the question is, what is your perspective on Act 46 and how it's being implemented?
Act 46. Well, I have a long history with Act 46. Years ago, we had study committees. I was the chair of the SVSU at the time. We had study committees about becoming one district throughout the region. And we met for several weeks with many stakeholders in each community, and it was determined at that time that we could improve our services at the SVSU without becoming commingled. Then Act 46 came into play. I was the chair of the it's not really a study committee. It was the first committee to meet. We weren't a formal study committee. That's what it was. We weren't the formal study committee. And we discussed it for several months, and we got bogged down with North Bennington's issues about the whole thing and what they were going to do. So we disbanded, and then the formal study committee was made, and we are where we are. We had to vote. The Act 46, the way it's being implemented, is not what the voters voted for, but being on a board, it's what we have to deal with. So we'll have to make it the best we can for all the districts, and hopefully we can all get along well, and make sure that we all have what we need in each one of our different schools, and that the equity will be there for everybody. And you know, the SVSU does 90% of what Act 46 wanted before we had to vote. There's very few things that the SVSU doesn't offer that will be offered when we go into Act 46. The new board takes place.
Thank you. Same question for you?
Yes, well, I was very ambivalent when Act 46 first happened, and kind of thought it would die in right then and there, because so many factors interrupted our thinking about it. And then I got to think, they offered us a discounted rate on our taxes, and I thought that was very good. But then people told me that wouldn't continue, it was only just for the interim. And in the long term, they told us it would lower our taxes. I doubt it very much, but you know, I'll remain non-skeptical about that. Act 46 looks like what we have right now, so that was my ambivalence. I couldn't accept changing something that we already changed. And I don't think the general public understood what was happening either. The bottom line right now is what we're facing is, instead of having 7 representatives for the town of Bennington, we will have only 2. And this will be voted on by probably June. And I don't quite think that's fair. When you measure up against towns like Woodford, which has 1. Woodford's a great place, a great town. But I don't know if they'll find 2 people to represent them. Then there's Pownell, who's a little bit smaller, and Shaftesbury, who's smaller. Will we all sit together and say, these are not just Bennington children, these are our children? And then when you look at the whole picture and all the towns that are represented, you know that children and families move from one place to the other. So in a way, they are all our children. And so we have to look at it that way. I do know that the high school has a model that seems to be wonderful, and everybody accepts that. So maybe in the years to come, we'll accept what we have now, but a lot of time and effort has been spent on doing something we already had. Thank you.
Thank you. This next question is, we'll begin with you, Jackie Kelly. It sounds like a follow-up. How would you work to ensure parity among the different schools in the new district?
Well, that's a really hard question. Everybody likes to have parity. Equal is not always equal. What we do for a group of 400 at Molly, do we do the same thing for a group of, let's say, 150 at Monument? I don't think so. It's not the same type of parity. It's not the same type of community. On a larger scale, how would we do it for Shaftesbury and Woodford and Pownell? I'm not really sure how we could establish parity. As I said just before in the last question, I think it's looking at a greater picture and saying that these are our children, and we have to keep that in focus. These are children who need to be educated, who need many of the same things that other children need in other districts. And we have to look at that and understand that and keep that always primal in our focus.
Jackie Prue, same question for you.
She said it. But I don't, parity, I don't think there's going to be a lot of changes to what happens in the different buildings. I think Pownell's they have programs that they do with their parents and their students that maybe we can mirror in our schools, but we have programs that they don't do. And I don't think that's necessarily bad. I think it has to, we have to look at the new board will have to look at everything that's going on, and I don't think there should be a lot of change in what's happening in Shasberry or what's happening in Pownell or what's happening in Bennington. As long as we're not taking away from the children's education, and the programs they have enhance the education of the students.
Thank you. Our fourth question will begin with you, Jackie Prue. What are the current challenges facing the Bennington School District, and how would you work to address those on the board?
Well, we've been addressing them. The biggest challenge we have is we have students that live in poverty and in trauma. And this year we put in our budget for trauma personnel to come in, 2 teachers that are specialized in trauma with paraeducators, so that we can separate some students out, and they could be they just need extra attention. The I don't know. I support, when the principals come to us, I support the principals when they make a case for, like they did on the trauma-sensitive classrooms. I support the principals when they say they need certain things for the NEC program, the autism program, and stuff like that. And I think that if we need it in other buildings throughout the SVSU, then we should be doing it. And hopefully the new board that takes over will do that. But we're only on the board until June. But we did put in the budget for it. And like I said, our biggest issue right now is we have a lot of kids in poverty, a lot of kids that come from homes where they have a lot of trauma, and trying to educate a student that's living in poverty or living with a lot of trauma. First, you have to get them past that so that they're ready to learn. I'm done.
Yeah, well, I would reiterate what Jackie said and add to it that, excuse me, one of the things that we need to look at is probably a more global sense of dealing with problems such as poverty issues. And I know it's not only in Bennington, it's in Pownell, it's every place where you go in southern Vermont, because there's not enough jobs that pay a standard wage. And so when you look at that, you look at the needs of children. And I would say there's another challenge, and to bring parents in and have parent groups and have parent discussions and ask parents, how are we going to change this? Because it's not up to just a board to do this. It's up to a community to do it. And maybe with a broader understanding of the other outlining districts from Bennington, we could see this and we could all join hands and have a better grouping. But just to take the opinion of 7 would not be good enough. We need the opinion of a community.
Thank you. So Jackie Kelly, we'll start with you. This question. Will you be running for a seat on the merged board if the merger occurs as anticipated?
Well, that's a short answer, no. I think others are more capable than I of taking on this new challenge. And maybe when I sit back for a couple of years, I'll take it up again. But for right now, I'm not interested in running for the 2 seats for the board.
Thank you.
I haven't decided. I'm going to be on the interim board because I'm the chair of I'm the clerk of the Bennington School District Board. So I will be on the interim board until the new board gets elected. And I would like to take some time, a couple meetings, to see how we get along as a group and gauge whether I want to run or not.
Very good. So we are now at the point where we're going to ask for your concluding statements. And again, you'll each have 3 minutes.
Well, your focus seems to be on, or your question seemed to be on what will happen next, the next chapter. And my chapter will be probably 3 months. But when we refocus on what has taken place before, and I'm sure Jackie will add to this, we see a broad spectrum of problems in our communities, and we'd like to move them forward. And there's no solving a problem, but there is addressing problems, and hopefully in the future we'll find solutions. One of the other benefits that I thought about for merging would be perhaps a teacher movement. Perhaps more teachers, instead of going up to Shaftesbury, could come back to Bennington, who live here in Bennington. We have many teachers who live outside of our community. And even though they understand our community, I certainly like to have them living in town and helping out, or living in Shaftesbury if it's a greater community. And I think we'd all benefit. The other thing that we didn't have before Act 46, and hopefully we will have, and I don't know if it will happen, but we could start with the people who work in schools. And if you live in Shaftesbury but work in Bennington full-time, your children should go to Bennington, or should be allowed to go to Bennington. I don't know what would happen when we did that. Or if you worked in Shaftesbury, your children could be allowed to go to Shaftesbury. But I'm sure the new board will work that all out. But when you're one board, maybe some of that movement will happen, because you have to look at it as what's best for children. Should they be with their parents at the same school or not? And certainly solve a lot of childcare.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to ask the voters to vote for both Jackie and me to be put back onto the BSD board until the end of the year anyways. We have accomplished many things while we've been on the boards. We got the board to approve the energy upgrades in all 3 of our buildings. There's windows at Bennell, there's new heating system and air handling systems in all 3 of the buildings. This was also student-centered. Our buildings were uncomfortable, they were hot, cold, antiquated. Air handlers didn't work anymore. Now the students are in a more comfortable environment that's more conducive to learning. We put money in the budgets for field trips. We never had much money in the budget for field trips. We were very, very surprised. She asked the question actually, and then I helped her with it. But we put money so that our children can go on field trips. We both strongly believe that children should be taken out of the buildings at times and given experiences that they wouldn't otherwise get. We also fought very hard to get the board to help with the funding of a science classroom. It's a week-long trip to Silver Bay and Lake George. We pay for half of their trip and all the busing. And the parent-teachers groups or the parents help raise the rest of the money for the students in the 5th grades to go. Bennell went once, and they've chose not to go the last 2 years. Molly Stark now goes every year, as Monument was going. And Woodford. And we just thought it was a parity thing. And Shaftesbury now goes, too. Shaftesbury started before we did, actually. Pownell's the only school that I know that hasn't taken up on that. I would like to see everybody in the region work together. They all are our children, whether they live in Pownell, Woodford, Shaftesbury. They're all going to come to the Mount Anthony. So at one time, they're all going to be together in the end. If people don't tuition them, I'd like to see that we can share students. I'd like to see that if you lived on the edge of Pownell and the kid next door goes to Pownell School, but because you live on the line, you have to go to Bennington School, but you two are best friends, that child should be allowed to go to Pownell. I'm done.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
You have been watching CAT TV Bennington School District Board Candidate Forum. We'd like to thank Jackie Kelly and Jackie Prue for being with us today. There's a third candidate on the ballot, Aaron Sawyer, who could not be with us today. Thank you for watching.